This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. Psst, healthcare pros, word's out, and it's too good to keep quiet. Look, LinkedIn is revolutionizing job hunting, making it possible to search by specialty, shift preference, and salary. Endless scrolling is out. Whether it's a mental health therapist or dental hygienist, finding the perfect role is faster and easier than ever. Head to linkedin.com/healthcare and start your search today.
This is the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, here's Roger Stone.
Welcome back. This is Roger Stone with our very special New Year's Eve edition of the Roger Stone Show. Joining us now is Hank Sheinkopf, a veteran Democratic political consultant and strategist, one of the key figures in the upset re-election of President Bill Clinton in 1992. A man who has worked in over 700 campaigns, both nationally and internationally. Someone who has an incredible win record, but also brings a historical perspective to both American and New York State and city politics. Hank and I are in different parties, but there is no one whose political judgment I respect more in America today than Hank Sheinkopf. Hank, welcome to the Roger Stone Show.
Roger, thank you for having me on, and I'm greatly embarrassed by that more than generous introduction, but thank you very much for your kind words.
Well, your track record speaks for itself, and the reason I like to interview is because sometimes a lot of Democrats won't come on the show. That's understandable. Those who do always have their partisan hat on. The thing I like about you, Hank, is that you're brutally honest. You don't color your analysis with your preferences. I try to avoid that as much as I can. It's hard because you're a loyal Democrat, but nobody really understands the business and the dynamics of what's going on. So let's kind of start with the 2024 presidential campaign, and let's start with the Republicans, not your party, but mine. How do you see this unfolding?
Well, if I were working for Nikki Haley, I'd be putting a lot of money into New Hampshire. I'd be doing a real field organization on the ground and try to create some kind of an upset, and I would hope that I come within, less than double digits behind Trump in New Hampshire, and that would be a great win for me were I her. And I can see how you do that kind of campaign. It's about organizing, going door to door. I don't know if she started it, but if she hasn't started, she should have started a long time ago. Absent that, Donald Trump's the nominee, and the question then is what happens in November of 2024. And today, based upon the polling data we see, Donald Trump is the president of the United States come January 2025.
To what extent do the results in the Iowa Republican presidential caucuses, which take place really 15 days from tomorrow, impact New Hampshire?
I think they have a significant impact for different reasons. I think they balance off New Hampshire. What do I mean by that? Evangelical Christians and others in Iowa will likely put their muscle and strength behind Donald Trump, which will give him a boost going into New Hampshire. Now, more moderate, I don't like moderate, but more traditional Republicans in New Hampshire who like to give surprises to people might bring it a lot closer to New Hampshire than people think, regardless of the Iowa outcomes, because the nature of the populations that are voting. Much more conservative, much more centrist, much more middle America, much more evangelical, much more like the MAGA Republicans. And New Hampshire probably is, by its very nature, is kind of a different kind of place, I think, Roger. So if it's a wash, if it's a knockout in Iowa for Trump, it may not be a knockout for for Trump in New Hampshire. There is the difference.
Does Nikki Haley have to beat Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, in Iowa, to get the kind of forward momentum she needs to score in New Hampshire?
It would appear that way. She's got to appear that she's got a shot. And the only way she gets a shot is by getting past DeSantis. Absent that, it's hard to see how she has the momentum going into New Hampshire, even if she's organizing and making it work. It's just why? Because the field is so stacked for Donald Trump. His numbers are, unless pollsters are complete idiots, and sometimes they tend to be, but unless, it's just going all his way. DeSantis thinks that he's the only one that can get even close. Nikki Haley has to make that untrue in a very significant fashion.
Yeah, I think DeSantis has made a giant mistake in setting his expectations much too high. I'm reading in the New York Post 2 Saturdays ago, he says he will, quote unquote, win Iowa. Well, to me, win is coming in first. Win is getting more votes than Donald Trump. Yet, and I admit, and I said it earlier in the show, polling within a caucus dynamic is a little different, a little harder, but it's not so difficult that you can overcome a 30, maybe even a 40-point gap. So I could see if Nikki Haley beats Ron DeSantis. Now, recognize DeSantis has visited 99 counties. He's MIA in Florida. We have an insurance crisis in our state. We have a utility rate crisis in our state. We have a rising crime crisis in our state. But our governor is absent. He's in Iowa running for president. He's folded his campaign operations in New Hampshire, in South Carolina, and in Nevada. So this is really do or die for him. I'm sure you read that great long piece in the New York Times by Maggie Haberman and others about the cluster F of that campaign, which goes down in history as one of the great disasters of all time. I mean, they burned through tens of millions of dollars and don't seem to have much to show for it. It is my assumption that if DeSantis cannot win Iowa, come in first, that his candidacy is probably done. What do you think?
I couldn't agree more. I think that his expectation levels are too high. The candidate campaign they've run is disastrous. If he gets even close, I mean, if someone decides to go after him on the present situation in Florida, particularly on insurance, he's done. He'll be the Gavin Newsom of the Republican Party. If Gavin Newsom shows up, should that become a possibility, California kills him. DeSantis gets within shot. Florida's problems right now kill him. So he's run a bad campaign. The only people that have benefited here really are the political consultants who've walked away with huge amounts of money. And he's not created a national base of significance. It does not appear that way. His numbers are not great. A lousy campaign. Haley's within shot, although this Civil War gap could be very serious for her. But we'll see. I just don't see how he gets out of this alive, frankly. And I don't see how he gets within shot at Trump. It just doesn't. It doesn't smell right. If I were him, I would probably save my money and buy a house. That's what I would do.
I agree with your analysis. I actually think he has hurt his brand back here in Florida very, very badly. He can't seek another term. He's termed out. I predicted on this show that his wife, Casey DeSantis, will probably run for governor. Hank, you know how this is. These people are middle-class people, but they get addicted to the perks. They get addicted to the private planes and the five-star resorts and the membership at the private clubs, rubbing elbows with millionaires and billionaires. In 1976, when the Reagan campaign, in which I was working, was low on cash, Ronald and Nancy Reagan began flying commercial to campaign stops.
Right.
This New York Times story last week revealed that the DeSantis campaign has spent more on private jets for the candidate and his wife than they have spent on advertising of all kinds. That just boggles the mind.
The political industrial complex knows no bounds. I mean, we were, regardless of what side of the aisle we were on when we started, we were warriors. We believed in something. We went out to do campaigns. Yeah, we got paid. We did well compared to everybody else, but it wasn't on this scale. The amount of money being spent was nowhere near it, and you had to do things on less cash. And the people that we were working for, generally, including Ronald Reagan, believed in the office. Did what they did things because they thought there was some value to them, whether we liked their politics or not. What we have instead is a class of people who simply exist to be in office at every level. It's not just the perks; it's the idea. It's kind of, I got to come up with a phrase for it. It's being called governor all day long, or madam, or council member, or congressman. I mean, it's not. They're no longer people, and the staffs they have available to them, are absurd. The amount of money being spent by the public to feed staff, service, and attend to these people could certainly do an awful lot of good in other ways. We need bridges in this country. We need less people on a payroll.
It's interesting. Let's now look at the Democrats. First of all, a kind of preliminary question. You watched the DeSantis-Gavin Newsom debate, which, if you're a political junkie like Hank and I, I'm sure you couldn't not watch it. What was that all about? In other words, why did each of them do that, and did it have any impact whatsoever on this race?
Has no impact whatsoever on this race. All it does is for junkies, for Republican political operatives, and who are junkies by definition for politics, it makes them understand how easy it will be to rip Newsom apart should he become there be a vacancy and he become the nominee. And all it did was make DeSantis look like a publicity hound, because there was no substance to the event. It tried to position him as the likely successor to the Trump candidacy, not to Trump's presidency, but to Trump's candidacy, which just didn't work. I mean, Trump is Trump, whether you like him or not. It's a unique phenomenon in American politics, unique phenomenon in international politics, and not replicable in any way, nor replaceable, frankly.
Yeah, it's interesting when you look at the second choice of DeSantis supporters, 8 out of 10 of them moved to Trump. Whereas if you look at the second choice of, say, the small but not insignificant number of Chris Christie supporters, their second choice is Nikki Haley. Nikki Haley's supporters do not move to Trump. They move back to undecided, which is why I think that the Iowa caucuses are going to have some impact. Only 1 week in between the Iowa caucuses and the New Hampshire primary. And important to note that independents can vote in the New Hampshire Republican primary, and there is no Democratic primary to distract them, because independents in New Hampshire tend to lean left, would be more inclined to vote in a Democratic primary than a Republican primary. The question is going to be whether, twofold. One, did Nikki Haley shooting herself in the foot late last week make a substantial difference? I'm going to argue that it did. She not only fumbled a question on slavery in the Civil War, but she fumbled a question on the Confederate flag. But additionally, and this will be interesting from the point of view of political science, her campaign is completely advertising driven. In other words, there is no structure in Iowa. There's no precinct captains, no county chairman, no operation designed to turn out her vote. Massive doses of broadcast television, cable television, digital advertising. This, by tradition, has, while it may have some effect in New Hampshire, traditionally has not had effect in Iowa. Let's before we leave that debate, I guess I came away with it with a view that it was very much like the 1960 debate. I mean, I thought, given the weak hand he had to play, having to defend a California record, Gavin Newsom seemed unflappable. He got in some real zingers against DeSantis. Right. I think he actually won on style, whereas DeSantis made the same mistake that Dick Nixon made in 1960. He thought that what you said was more important than how you looked, and he looked tight, sweaty, nervous, under pressure. It was interesting from that point of view. Let's move, Hank, to the Democrats. Are you certain Joe Biden will be the Democratic nominee for president?
I am certain today. I'm not an insurance actuary. That's not my business. What I do know historically is that no one gives up the presidency of the United States voluntarily. The last time that someone gave it up voluntarily without being under pressure was when Lyndon Baines Johnson in 1968. And he even cushioned his leaving by saying he wouldn't accept the nomination of his party. He will not seek, nor will he accept. It was about his party first and the presidency second. You know, it's kind of interesting. Why would someone not want to be the most powerful person in the world? Anything a president does has an instant impact. I saw it myself in the White House. It's not something you give up easily, and it is the place that everybody in the world wants to be. So I don't see that. I don't see him leaving under any circumstance. I just don't think it happens that way.
Running a business comes with a lot of what-ifs. But luckily, there's a simple answer to them. Shopify. It's the commerce platform behind millions of businesses, including Thrive Cosmetics and Momofuku. And it'll help you with everything you need. From website design and marketing to boosting sales and expanding operations, Shopify can get the job done and make your dream a reality. Turn those what-ifs into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
Last week was our first playoff game, and my plaque psoriasis was so itchy under all my gear. Sometimes just thinking about scratching could take me out of the moment. And then my doctor told me I could get clearer skin with a pill called Otezla.
Otezla apremilast is a prescription medicine used to treat adult patients with plaque psoriasis for whom phototherapy or systemic therapy is appropriate. Otezla can help you get clearer skin after just 4 months.
Okay, ready for the next game. Talking to my doctor about a pill was a total game changer.
Don't use Otezla if you're allergic to it. Get medical help right away if you have trouble breathing or swallowing, swelling of the face, lips, tongue, throat, or arms. Severe diarrhea, nausea or vomiting, depression, suicidal thoughts, or weight loss can happen. Tell your doctor if any of these occur and if you have a history of depression or suicidal thoughts. Live in the moment. Ask your doctor about Otezla. Call 1-844-4-OTEZLA or visit Otezla.com for prescribing info about cost, and more.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
At Arizona State University, we're bringing world-class education from our globally acclaimed faculty to you. Ranked #1 in innovation for 10 consecutive years and #2 among public universities for employability. ASU isn't just ahead of the curve. It's creating new paths to success. Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
Don't you think professional Democrats are concerned about not only his inconsistent, shall we say, performance on the stump or in public, the impact of his policies, rampant inflation, high energy prices, the possibility of World War III, and particularly immigration and its impact on the states and cities? There has to be great nervousness within today's Democratic Party.
There is no question but that Democrats are nervous, and the blabbers, the professional blabbers, who live by blabbing and sourcing to reporters of consequence, are busy. You know, they haven't had a moment's rest. Can Biden explain the national condition? He can't unless he faces Donald Trump. or someone that the polls would indicate he has some chance of beating in high intensity and highly driven high electoral vote states. Absent that, it's a problem. I mean, who else runs against him? Who else wins that? And it depends, frankly, on the status of the legal cases that the former president might be facing at any particular moment. So I think that there are a lot of intangibles. That's the way that he wins, that Joe Biden wins. If not, if there were another Republican in place, it's likely that he would have a much more difficult time winning, would be my hunch.
Yeah, you definitely have a situation in which we get, if we get a Trump-Biden rematch, both men enter the contest with very intense bases, but also both extremely polarizing. You and I talked to. Go ahead,
Roger. But hold on. Let me just add this. Not to interrupt you. Forgive me, but to put this in context, it is the changing nature of the Democratic Party and the stability of the Republicans over the last two cycles, frankly, that tells the tale. The Democrat Party, both parties are in trouble for different reasons as entities, but the Democrats are in much more trouble right now. They have a standard bearer, Joe Biden, who is in his 80s, making him out of touch generationally with large segments of that party. He's got to appeal to specific groups in order to increase their intensity of turnout to be successful. If you look at the numbers in the last presidential go-around, he needs to do that. That's not likely based upon polls today. The Israel versus Hamas, or which is really the Israel versus Iran war going on right now, which is a proxy battle without which the United States would absolutely be at war with Iran. Is turning off a whole generation, younger generations of people, frankly, who should shut up because they paid no price and borne no burden and have done no investment in this country, this extraordinary nation, and its future overall. That plus the lack of intensity by African Americans, and we see in data, puts him in very, very serious trouble of losing an election. Question is it Trump? Trump he can beat. Is it someone else? We don't know.
Yeah, I'm perplexed by the administration's seeming double game. The Democratic Party under Harry Truman is the party that under which Israel was founded. Yet we unfroze $6 billion of assets for Iran. We're in the midst of unfreezing another $100 billion. We're taking them at their word that this money will be used for non-terrorist purposes. Sorry, I don't believe it. And we seem to be putting restraints on Israel and their ability to defend themselves, which I really find outrageous. Right. Yet, the most recent survey I saw showed that in a matchup with Joe Biden, Donald Trump only receives 22% of the American Jewish vote.
Well, because the 11th commandment is "Thou shalt be democratic," but the larger issues, if you get out of the idiotic politics of it, and you look at the long-term problem for the United States of America, nothing has changed since 1948. Control of the Mediterranean basin is critical to American security internationally. Simple. We lose control of the Mediterranean basin, which is what Iran understands, which is what the Russians understand. That's why they're in Syria. We lose control. We'll be eating grass here in 5 years. Don't even think about it otherwise. Our enemy is Iran, unquestionably so. It's a conflict that goes back into the 40s, frankly, if you look at the history of the region. And the Israelis are the only choice we have. We have no other option. Should they fail, should they not defeat Hezbollah and Hamas, and should the Houthis go unchallenged and unchecked and not killed, we are in very serious trouble. We are as close to World War III as we have been since the Cuban Missile Crisis. The only reason the world hasn't blown up is because of this most extraordinary nation that has done so much to protect the rest of the world with its own foibles. We've made some mistakes, but overall, this nation has kept the world safe through a balance of power where strength has prevailed and weakness has failed. And we are now at a point of where we're being tested. If the Israelis fail, we're finished here. It is only a matter of time before our enemies laugh hysterically and wind up on the East Coast. It's just a matter of time, or the squeeze play. China on one side threatening the West Coast, our enemies in the Middle East and with their Russian helpers challenging the East Coast. If Americans don't believe this, they're deluding themselves. And 9/11 proves that our enemies can cross those oceans. We didn't believe it before, but we should really believe it now.
I really could not agree more. Hank, last time I had you on, you referred to the toxic mix for Democrats that included open borders and mass illegal migration. We're seeing that playing out in the streets of New York right now. What is the impact of that on election 2024?
No one cares if New York, nationally blows up. I mean, it's just not important to them. But what is important is chaos. And what we do know, Roger, historically, and you've certainly been a participant in these events, is that when there is chaos, people tend to vote much more conservatively. They become more afraid. The Republicans have become the party of the white Catholic working man in this country, and women, which is a tremendous shift if you look at our history going back to Al Smith and the anti-Catholicism that created the modern Democrat Party. Those folks are beside themselves because they see their opportunities being taken away by people who have no right to be here from their perspective. The end result of that is a probably vote against the cities where the migrants are located, a vote for Republicans wherever possible, where it's logical, because of a fear that crime is getting out of control, whether it is or is not, and that the chaos is unwarranted and must be defended against. Those are moments when Republicans tend to do well. Ask Richard Nixon, may he rest in peace, where, Nixon's the one. Those ads of 1968 became the benchmark for ads of the future, because that campaign created the negative ad as we know it. So that's where we're going. That chaos will be the subject of independent expenditure campaigns across the country by sources with all kinds of money going into 2024. We haven't even begun to see it, but that chaos is the thing that could, frankly, undo Joe Biden and undo Democrats. The Senate certainly in play for the Republicans with an advantage there. The U.S. Senate, the U.S. House, a toss today. You'd have to give it to the Democrats. But who knows what will happen if the chaos, in the sense that things are out of control, largely a product of the migrants, continues.
It does seem to be, as you put it, a toxic mix. Because all politics is local, let me pitch you a curveball. Mayor Eric Adams seems to be mired in various problems. There's a corruption scandal. There's a crime spike. There's illegal immigrants destroying his budget and causing chaos in every borough. I stress for this broadcast that there are no charges against Mayor Adams. No, he's not been charged with any crime, nor has he been convicted of any crime, but these stories are not good. And then I saw in the New York Post a story of a poll, because in the event that Adams had to step down, you would not have Republican and Democrat primaries the way you normally would have, but in a special election, you would have what they call in California a jungle election, in which everybody of all parties runs at the same time. And the poll that I saw showed former Governor Andrew Cuomo with the largest number of votes. Is a comeback by Andrew Cuomo, who has $60 million in campaign funds in the bank, is that a real viable possibility?
It is an absolutely viable possibility, and it depends to a large extent, like all possibilities, on the kind of campaign would he run, were he to be in play. It has to be a campaign that says, look, and this is only should the incumbent Mayor Adams, unfortunately for him or for whomever, not be in office at the time because of who knows what. I don't want to speculate on that. But should that be the case, Andrew Cuomo's argument is a very simple one. Look, it's 2024. I'm running for this office. We have real problems. We've got a budget problem. We've got a spike in some kinds of crimes. People feel uncomfortable. I'm an expert on homelessness. I can deal with it. I'm an expert on infrastructure. I can fix it. I'm an expert on organizing things. I can fix the crime issue, make our police work, that they're respectful to the community and doing their job. I'm only asking you to let me stay in office until the elections in 2025. And if you like what I've done, we can talk about it then. But in the meantime, I'm here to fix the problems and bring us back together again. I know I've made some mistakes, but I'm the right guy for this moment because I know how to make things work. That's his argument. If he strays from that, he gets killed. It's simple. If he stays to that argument, he has a higher probability of winning. He has loyalty among African-American voters. They trust him. They also think he was wronged. Other people certainly do. If he makes it, I can fix the moment issue, it's going to be tough to get past him. But if he takes a longer view, it creates that great wedge opening, Roger, that you and I know a lot about, where someone can walk in and smack him and get away with it. That's the kind of campaign he's got to run. And it's got to be a faith-based campaign that brings people together believing that the religion called New York, which put more immigrants into play across the country and helped create this most extraordinary nation in this 20th century, he's got to make that real for people. He's got to make people believe. They have this sense about the mayor of New York City and there are plenty of examples of this, Koch, Giuliani, and others, that when they go to sleep at night, he turns the lights off. And when they wake up in the morning, he turns the lights on. Someone's got to make people feel that way, especially after the trauma they're presently experiencing.
All right. Unfortunately, we're out of time because I could talk politics with Hank Sheinkopf forever. Hank, thank you so much for joining us on the Roger Stone Show. Folks, on behalf of Mrs. Stone and I and the entire family at 77 WABC, let me wish you a happy, healthy, and safe new year. And please hold on, because my great friend Joe Piscopo is going to be right along with Sundays with Sinatra.